So my friend Nick Donlin enlightened me with this concept about camera bodies. The second you buy a camera body, it's gonna lose value. Camera bodies are like a car. The second you drive it off the lot, it's going to decrease in that value. A camera body is a liability, not an asset. Now, you don't need to go out and buy a new car every single time there's a new feature. A lot of those features are luxuries like leather seats, Bluetooth speaker system, whatever else. The difference with the camera body is that there are features that come out every couple of years that make camera bodies so much more valuable for the current ecosystem of creating content. So I traded in my Sony A9 and I picked up the Sony A7IV. Now, why did I do that? Obviously, I could have purchased a Sony FX3, which is the cinema version of the A7S III that I'm shooting on right now, but that camera is $3,800, so very pricey. To replace my A9, which was a flagship camera in 2018, I could theoretically buy an A9 II or a Sony A1, versus the Sony A7IV is $2,500. So when I paid $4,400 plus tax and shipping and whatever else in 2018 for the A9, I was getting a lot for the time. But now that camera is outdated, there are some features that are obsolete in my eyes, and I want to demonstrate those features to you. So let's get it out of the way. The Sony A7IV is a hybrid camera. It specializes in shooting video and photo. Now, because I am a hybrid one-man band most of the time, having a system where I can have a dedicated video camera such as the Sony A7S III that I'm shooting on right now, and then a photo camera that I can use for getting still images, and a wonderful backup camera because the sensor settings of the Sony A7IV will better match the Sony A7S III. Well, the first thing I was looking for in a B cam was that it would shoot in 10-bit. 10-bit meaning it has more information and color data in the final image so that when I'm color grading and doing my color correction in post, I have a little bit more wiggle room. It's not quite like shooting raw video, but it's very, very close. And especially working in a Sony ecosystem with the Sony A7S III, the Sony A7IV shooting in 10-bit helps me match that better. On top of matching the 10-bit settings, I also want to make sure that my colors can match well. So if you've seen any of my YouTube content before 2020, then you'll notice that a lot of the color grades are kinda, I don't want to say off, but it's what Sony gave me. Because the Sony A9 did not shoot in log, I didn't have the ability to do any fancy color grading in post, so I didn't really do much. With the Sony A7S III, I have the ability to shoot in log, but it basically made my Sony A9 not obsolete, but there is definitely going to be a color shift in those cameras if I were to use that B cam. So I never actually ended up using the A9 for a lot of shoots. I would just rent another Sony A7S III if I needed a B cam, and that was frustrating to me. So fortunately, the Sony A7 IV does shoot in log, and that's something that I'm really looking for in 2022 and onward, being able to have good sensors so that I can shoot in 10-bit and log so that I can get the best color match between the cameras I'm working with on set. Now, typically speaking, the Sony A7 IV, according to other reviewers, it does not excel at certain things such as rolling shutter or the fact that it does not have 4K 120, but that's what I have the Sony A7S III for. So then the Sony A7 IV is going to be a wonderful B cam if I'm shooting studio content or top-down camera angles. It would allow me to get that second angle in 24p, and most of the time you're not shooting something in 120p and then you need a B camera angle as well. Another big thing about the Sony A7 IV that I really like is that the autofocus is still very, very close to the Sony A7S III. I dare say it is better than the Sony A9. However, I will say the A9 is still up to par in 2022. It was Sony's flagship camera at the time, and it revolutionized the way you could get autofocus with a camera. Now, there are some compromises that I am making with the Sony A7 IV that I'm a little bummed about, but those features are so specific to the A9 and the use cases that the A9 was intended for that I'm not missing out too much. So one of the big things about the Sony A9 was that it had 20 frame per second continuous shooting without a blackout. What that means is you can get 20 frames per second if you're holding down the shutter button, and the viewfinder or the LCD will not turn black during your shooting. Now, that's really great for shooting sports, wildlife, or potentially weddings, but I do none of those things. So the fact that I have a blackout with continuous burst doesn't really hurt me all that much. It also still shoots in 10 frames per second instead of 20, which is more than enough for what I'm doing most of the time. Another compromise, I did mention this a little earlier, the Sony A7 IV does not shoot 4K 120 and it shoots 4K 60 with a crop. But again, my main camera is going to be the Sony A7S3, so the video features I'm really looking for out of the A7 IV, again, log, 10-bit, and just B-cam capabilities. Now, what I'm really excited about with the A7 IV is its photo capabilities. The A9 was my photo camera for a very long time, and it has moved on. It will move on to a new owner who will appreciate it and use it, but typically speaking, when I do photos nowadays, I'm not doing a lot of photography for studios or products. I'm doing most of my commercial, I get paid jobs doing video. So a photo camera to me is something that I can use to make memories. You could argue, why don't you just use the Sony A7S III? But there's something inspiring about using something that is dedicated as a photo camera, and I have more megapixels. That's really the big kicker there. The A7 IV has a 33 megapixel camera, so bigger sensor, versus the A7S III, which has a 12 megapixel sensor. So long story short, the width or resolution width of the A7S III images was about 4200, so they're still pretty big, but the A7 IV has a 7K native sensor, so I can definitely take advantage of cropping. I'll be able to take wider photos and crop in when I need to, maybe get a little bit more detail, especially with that super sampling capabilities that the A7 IV is capable of. And the final thing I'm really stoked about when it comes to the A7 IV is the new Sony color science. So if you've purchased a camera before 2020 that is Sony brand, you will notice that the images have some sort of look, versus after 2020, they come out a little bit more saturated, a little bit more rich. It is, to an extent, a subjective view, but I think they look better. So I'm very happy with the Sony A7 IV, and the reason why I made this video is because I want you to think about the current camera body that you have, and if you purchased it before 2020. If you did, you might be able to trade it in for a new modern camera that will give you some extra features if you need them. If you do not need to shoot in 10-bit, if you do not need to shoot in log, and you do mostly photo work, keep your camera. Do not spend more money. This video is intended to help you make a more informed purchasing decision so that when you are getting ready to upgrade your camera, you're actually doing it for the right reasons. If, on the other hand, you have a camera body that you use and you're missing some features that are just an expectation in 2022 and onward, such as log, 10-bit, 4K 60, etc., it might be worth upgrading. And the final concept that my friend Nick really helped me wrap my head around is that for every day that goes on that you have an older camera body, it's going to depreciate in value and you're going to get less for your trade-in. So I purchased my A7 IV, and the final bill at Sammy's Camera was $3,200. When I traded in my A9, they offered $1,300 back. So the final bill that I paid, money changed hands. At the end of the day, I am out $1,800, roughly speaking. There's taxes and stuff in there. But this video is hopefully going to get you to think about, are you a content creator? Do you need these features? And if so, do you have an asset liability? Camera bodies are a liability. And with that liability / asset, could you get something better that will help you make better content or better looking content? Let's be real, making better content is all about writing, but that's a whole story for another video. So think about that. I hope you enjoyed this video and it gave you some insight as to the economics, financial, purchasing decisions of buying cameras and upgrading in 2022 and onward. If this was helpful, smash that like button with a crowbar. It lets me know that I'm making valuable content that is valuable to you. Hit that subscribe button to join the party and learn more about motion graphics and camera things. And I will leave you with the final tip. As always, eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight and you'll make some. Goodbye, my friends. Bye.